One of the things that's been an interesting transition is that my 10-year-old has been pretty clingy and cuddly and been this like little kid that we've been able to be really close with. And that might mean making her breakfast or tucking her in for bed or reading those stories and these like really cherished little kid moments. And it's kind of coming to a point, 8, 9, 10 years old. I was really wondering, when is that going to change? Am I going to have to like do this as a teen? Am I going to have to make her cereal for college? Like, I don't know when that transition is going to happen. And I did appreciate it because I knew it was going to happen. I just didn't think that one day it would happen literally overnight. There was no slow transition. And so one of the things that I'm kind of struggling with is how did my 10-year-old who would ask me to tuck them in now says, I don't need you to do anything. I don't need you to tuck me in. I don't need you to pick anything out. And in fact, I'll make myself breakfast. And that's been a really interesting transition because it just happened so fast. And I'm curious to think, what are your thoughts on how that happened? Why does it happen? And more importantly, how did it happen so fast?
I also just want to note, I want to talk to you about those last questions you're asking, but I also just want to say something that I'm hearing you say that I think is important is that even all along, as you're kind of in it and watching this happen and feeling the whole experience of parenting a child who needs you and wants you, that it was always a mixed bag, that you always were able to feel the perspective of time, changing, and that she's a person who is going to feel things and want things now, and that's going to change one day. And also that there was feedback for you, that there was good things about this for you, that you really enjoyed the closeness, even if you also could feel kind of the labor of it. And sort of also I'm hearing like the kind of existential dread I think we all feel when we just sort of like lean in to being there for our child in these ways, that we sort of feel a little bit like, ooh, but what if I'm getting in their way of growing up? But also it's complicated because they're only little for so long and they only need us in that way for so long. I'm hearing all of that kind of twisted up. And one of the reasons I really wanted to just say that is that I think what it is to raise a soul is all of that, knowing all of those things together and not necessarily being able to see the future, but that you're in it like any relationship. You're just in it. That's really, in many ways, the core of what it is to raise a soul, is to also be a soul and be in the moment together. Okay, but so let's talk about that shift. And when it happens so abruptly and you're kind of left like, well, what's my purpose here now? I used to be the guy who tucked the kids in and tied the shoes and put the toothpaste on the toothbrushes, and like, what's my role in their lives now? What do they need from me? And I think that kind of, when it's abrupt, can often leave a parent feeling like, oh, what is parenting even? I thought this was parenting and now I don't do that anymore. And I'm sort of having to evolve. And the kids always move faster than we do. We've got old brains, and it always takes us a minute to like catch up to change. And the kids are like, change is always what they're doing. It's easier for them to move forward. So they do often get there faster than us. I think that's a very common feeling that you're having. And, I think when it happens like that, that one day it's like they need everything. And then it's like all of a sudden, oh, not only do they not need everything, but they're so capable, they can do it. I think you can give yourself a little pat on the back and say, it's because I invested for so long. Giving care to our children when they ask, being responsive to them, does not inhibit the development of independence. That's what you're learning and experiencing and what you can show other people. Not only does it not inhibit it, but when we are responsive to our kids, that's actually how we're teaching them. This is how this goes. If you want to fall asleep at night, what you need is to feel the consistency of a bedtime ritual. You need to feel like, I know how this is going to go. I'm going to fall asleep. I'm going to sleep all night. I'm going to have some dreams. I'm going to wake up the next day. Instead of feeling like, how is this going to go? Sometimes the parent's here, sometimes they're not. I don't know how I'm supposed to feel. What is sleep going to, is sleep ever going to feel restful and peaceful? If you lay with them, if you're there, if they're asking you to, what you're giving them is that consistent experience. And then it is easier for them just one day to switch flip a switch, to flip a switch and say, oh, I can do this. And it's easy actually for me.
One of the things I
Sometimes,
really like that you said real quick
yeah,
is that
yeah, please, yeah,
you talked about the labor of parenting.
yeah.
And it made me think, for 10 years, I had this labor, and let's just call it a job for a second, maybe even a career, where I got pretty good at it. I knew what to expect. I could clock in for the day, and I knew what was going to happen. Meanwhile, the employee, the child, is like, I've got this routine, and I continue to build and continue to grow, and I'm almost ready for a promotion,
Mm,
take on some things myself.
mm,
And
mm.
that labor of parenting means, man, I have to start a whole new career. Now I'm kind of like in this next phase. And the reason I appreciate you saying that is it does change my perspective a little bit. Like maybe this is now where I have a different role,
Mm,
a new role. And maybe
mm,
this is where I now start to function as a different type of parent, maybe
mm,
even a new employer in a way.
mm.
And those consistencies and those things that you talk about allowed that promotion to happen.
Yes.
And that's a really kind of fun way to reframe the perspective of this very abrupt uh, transition. And so, there's an analogy there that I think that just came out naturally that I wasn't thinking about. So I appreciate that.
I love that, and I love that analogy. I don't know that I was even thinking about it exactly in those terms, but it fits so well when you think, because you're a manager, and so when you think about how you invest in people, you want them to grow and get better, and in some ways, you want them. If you're a mentor, you want your mentee to even be better than you. You want them to soak everything up and succeed, and that's what we want for our kids. We want them to be able to take all of that good learning that we're giving them and make it even something beyond that which we can dream, that we can vision in our kind of limited way, right? Um, but I'm so curious as we're talking about this, what's your new role going to be?
That's a good question. And, with each one of these souls, as you say, they're all different. Um, the older sibling transitioned and got promoted a little differently. Like, I just didn't have such a clear break. It was so much more tapered. And then naturally just transitioned into, that teen relationship. Um, and again, it just goes to show these kids, they're all different. And I guess I would also say, like, you talked about giving ourselves a pat on the back. We got to give ourselves a little bit of grace because they're learning all this stuff from us or from school or what they see. But hopefully, it was the good impressions and the great impressions, either mom or dad or both or guardian or whoever, take away and just continue to thrive as great people. For me personally, I'm so proud of what this young child or now this tween has become that I do want to think about how do I almost reinforce this growth? Okay,
Mm,
what's next? Okay, how are you going to use it? And that's the part that I think I can lean into and say, all right, let's now start shaping this kid as a force for good, as a great um, citizen, as uh, a volunteer, as a philanthropist, as a humanitarian, as a sibling. Like, what's that next level stuff that really makes us appreciate these tiny human beings that we brought into the world that hopefully will now change the world?
working yourself out of one job, it sounds like gives you some freedom to really dream about what's next and not just grieve what's behind you. I think that's exciting. Um, there was something else you said, Eddie, that I wanted to draw out because I know it's like a really common thing I hear from parents, that I hear people thinking. Let me just think about it for a second.
You got it.
You were talking about, oh, I got it. Um, what one thing we're talking about that you have done with courage up until this point is to be responsive to your child. And I do think that takes courage because I think we have a lot of little voices in our ear as parents today telling us that following the child's lead is somehow wrong. And I think that there's certainly a way that we provide, if we provide no structure for our children, that's not loving or helpful. If we aren't being responsive to them, but rather sort of imposing out of our own anxiety, right? Like, I'm putting you to bed because I don't want I don't want to be hard, right? But being responsive when a child says, I need you, I think takes some courage to say, I believe you. And you've done that. And so now, as you think about this next stage, I'd also just put a little bug in your ear to listen and to sort of maybe even ask, start the conversation, make it a convo, brief, ongoing. What do you need from me now? I'm realizing all this stuff that I was doing that you needed, that chapter's closing, and I'm proud of you. And now I'm trying to figure out what's the role that I play. And what I've done up until this point is listen to you. And I want to keep doing that. So, what does it look like now at this age when it's not like these quick, specific bids, like tie my shoes or get me a fork, please?
Mm.
But when it's something else that they are drawing from us, but it doesn't always feel articulated, how do we turn it into a conversation that we're actually having?
Yeah, I don't know what's scarier. Knowing that is going to happen and they're going to need that, or not knowing what they need. Like the act of going through it or actually going through it. There is so many layers of like how to prepare for that next level. And, I think that's why this transition, especially in this 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old age, you kind of bring them up as a baby. And so you get to like deal with their general welfare. All right. There's so many chapters, a million chapters of getting up to this point, and you kind of like almost get your master's degree in parenting, right or wrong, mistakes or not. There's always going to be stuff, but it's like you just kind of maybe figure it out, and then it's okay. Now you're going for your fellowship, and it is going to be a total slog to get through this next phase of parenting when you just thought you figured it out. And now you're telling me I should ask them, what do they need from me? My gosh, what have I been doing already? Um, but it's such a good reminder that these human souls are not you. They have their own opinions, they have their own ideas. Some of them, of course, are going to be nurtured, and then some are just going to be part of that nature. Um, and I think that's probably a conversation I will have with my child, my kid, my tween. What do you need from me? Now, I have a feeling the answer is going to be pancakes. That is one thing that is pretty consistent.
That job, you'll never lose that job.
I feel like I'm going to keep that job for a really long time. Dad's pancakes are pretty darn good. But where does the next part go? And I don't think there's going to be you know, a deep philosophical speech about, emotional responsibility that she's going to bring out. But I do think that the conversation will be a little bit different, than read me a bedtime story. And that is going to be something that is new to tackle.
I also want to add, you're saying you're someone who's probably going to get comfort with just saying, what do you need? Um, but I also kind of want to leave this on the table too, especially for people maybe who are watching and listening, and that would feel really awkward or just outside of character, and therefore they won't do it, which is what happens, right? If something just feels weird,
It's
sometimes we're just like,
always easier to say no. It's always easier not to do something.
well,
The hard part is saying yes. The hard
right.
part is following through.
And it's hard to just get awkward, just to do awkward, vulnerable things and say things in ways that are going to require you to like kind of talk it out, right? But having said that, something that I do when I think about this kind of advice to just ask, what do you need? I do two things that I'm hoping will be helpful to hear about. One is that and Dr. Brandy, my colleague and my friend Dr. Brandy taught me this. Sometimes creating the conversational space is kind of about just talking and narrating things. So sometimes I'll just be in the kind of environment of the space and just say things out loud like, I, maybe we're cooking together or something. And I might say, it's so fun to do this together. And as you grow, I'm always looking for ways to kind of be able to have this time with you and to kind of show up and for us to be together. And this
Hmm.
feels like that. And I'm not asking a direct question to a tween who might be like, ew, oh, awkward conversation. I'm sort of just laying it out there and then maybe just like backing away a little slowly, right? The other thing is that I try to like pepper the moments with those kinds of statements. And so when the child has already opened something up, they're mindlessly talking about some drama in their friend group, or they are coming to me and saying, I'm not doing well in my math class and I just can't figure it out. I'm trying to be mindful of saying, how can I help? I'll do whatever would be helpful to you and make sure that the situation gets better. Let's talk out what I can do, what you can do, what we can do together. Sometimes I start there instead of, oh my gosh, I'm hiring a tutor, or we have to start studying 3 times a week, or kind of, coming up with the solutions. I try to be mindful of stepping back at this age as a first kind of out the gate thing and saying, um, how can I help? What can I do? Let's talk about that.
Yeah, the one that went, I think those are two really good tactics. The tactic I most connect with is that first kinetic one. You're in this moment of doing something, you're feeling something, there's a visual component, maybe you're doing something with your hands, maybe you're building something, maybe we're destroying something. And so that's something that really connects with me because at that moment in time, to be able to have the space to say, how much fun is this? Or how cool is this? Or how great does this feel? Maybe we're doing a volunteering event. Maybe we're building a birdhouse. I don't know. But at that moment in time, it seems really easy to find the space to say, yeah, we could do this again. We can do this frequently. We can do this whenever you want.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I really like that example. And maybe it's because I'm a kinetic learner that way, anyways. And I think the second one just takes a little bit of practice. So I think those are really good tactics for the strategy of how do you create the space to find those connections.
Okay, Eddie, here's my last question for you. So in thinking about how we raise souls, I think it's really, really important. You can't do it actually if as the parent you're not fully kind of human and present and yourself thinking about who you are, what your soul is, so that we can lead our children in that way. That we're able to say, this is what it is to be human, and I am here human. And so, as part of that, a thing that I think parents have started to let go of, I'm seeing around me, is the ability to say, here are my super strengths. And I honor them as much as I know there's things I'm just not going to do well. Being a parent doesn't mean we get any kind of real skill training in some of the day-to-day stuff. And I think a lot of parents, me included, all of us have days where we just feel like, ugh, I feel really bad for this kid that they got such a disorganized mom. I say that sometimes. I'm like, I'm so sorry, you guys. I wish you'd had a life with a mom who remembers to fill out the forms. Now, I know that that's not your particular growing edge, but the point is, we all have those things and we can fixate on them and just feel kind of ashamed and bad all the time about the stuff that gets in our way. I think it's really, really important to be able to also say, but here's what you did get in this life. Like, for example, I am very free with the arts and crafts supplies, and I don't mind a
Mm,
mess. And kids come to my house because there's glitter when we do art, and there's sprinkles when we bake. And that is like a thing that I bring to the lives of my kids is a little bit of mess and a lot of joy and creativity. Tell me what is yours. What's the thing that you feel like this is my super strength, and how lucky is my family that I that they get me, that my soul is here, that I show up in this way.
You know, I'm glad you didn't ask the front end of that question is, what are you working on? Because I don't think we have enough time for that. But the things that I feel very proud about, I guess, in terms of my very um, around my self-awareness, around things that I think I bring to the table, things that I can maybe, um, help, whether it be compensate for my partner or add to my partner's positive qualities. Look, I'm a pretty organized person, and so I know that if we've got an outcome in mind, I'm going to be very prepared to get us to that place. Planning a trip, packing for it, outcomes that we don't expect to be prepared for, organization around it. Have we booked it? Have we put and loaded the car? Is it optimally configured so we can get every single piece of equipment that we need for that road trip? Do we know exactly what's in there and does everyone know where it is? Are the right bags in the right seats so you can get access to the things that you need for the Kindle or the game or the music? Everything's within hand's reach. The water bottles are filled. Those that need ice have it. Those that don't. And I think that that's something that I bring around that certainty that, hey, when we're like going to do something, we got what we need. No one's forgetting a bathing suit on my watch. Okay. All right. And I think that hopefully either that organization or that preparation or the outcome in mind will be something that sticks with them. And that's something that they'll say, yeah, dad was really good at this. And because of it, we were able to fully enjoy, or we were fully able to participate, or we were fully able to go swimming with a bathing suit. Okay. Because we've all been there. So those are some things that I guess I think about.
I know so well how that level of organization is what creates the sort of like sometimes invisible space for all the joy to happen. And if your kids take it for granted today, I know they won't forever. And I think that's very beautiful. It's a very beautiful superpower to bring to your family.
Thanks.